back in open session from close, and we have a recommendation from Dr. Ingram at this time.
Thank you, Chair Warden. I would like to ask for a motion from the floor to approve the personnel report as presented in closed session by Ms. Rhonda James Davis.
I move to approve and accept the superintendent's report and recommendations for personnel.
We need a second.
Second.
Okay. We've had a motion and a second to approve the personnel agenda that was discussed and closed. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
and Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to committee business, the financial committee, and we have information from Ms. Wilkins, our Director of Maintenance. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Wilkins about that?
I have one question.
Okay.
The Central Elementary School, the ground repair mud pit, and it says several times, ground repaired mud pit several times and coned off. However, parents and bus drivers still drive through it. So what is the planned solution for that area? Are we going to redirect traffic around that area, or are we going to keep?
Is anybody talking? I can't hear anybody.
Can we choose one of your mic? 1 second.
Ms. Wilkins is talking.
Start again for him, so because Mr. Walton didn't hear you.
Okay. We had moved the traffic pattern over and blocked it off. So they went through our barrier and then moved it further over. So now it's created a wider area. But Mr. Fudge and I think the custodian has rerouted it a different way because we haven't had any complaints. But the bus drivers are still parking where the parents can't get around. So for now, it's drying up, but it's not, I mean, it's going to rain, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so we'll see how that works.
Have we looked at cost to possibly paving or putting cement there? Have we looked at that cost of that, or we just gonna?
If you recall, we just spent capital money to widen that driveway so that they can have double lane traffic going through, and it's not being utilized 100%.
Okay, I'm just curious what the solution is, because it sounds like do we have staff or anybody that can help maintain that so that we don't have that issue constantly? I'm just trying to find a solution instead of.
My grounds crew did. I have pictures where they went through and graded it out, put more dirt, put more sand. But before it could dry out, they went through where they had marked off and drove through it.
We'll probably have to do something like a permanent barrier or something like that just to keep people from, I mean, there's got to be, we can't just throw our hands up and say you can't do it. There's always a way. If we can't reroute traffic, then we may just have to either pave over it totally, but when you pave on top of swamp, that sinks too. So we really need to sort of get people used to not being on it. And to do that, well, we may have to put up something more substantial to keep people off of it.
I've seen some things like the Jersey wall, pieces like a Jersey wall.
Right.
Maybe put that to keep them going.
Right.
I just think.
We're not going to just throw, I'm sorry, I didn't mean
I'm
to.
sorry.
We're not going to just throw up our hands and say we can't fix it. That's not acceptable. You know, we'll fix it somehow.
Mr. Spence,
That was my
it's just an overflow for now. I think it's when the parents don't want to wait out in the street, they kind of circle them around and park them there. But I think it's just a temporary for their flow.
Well, I was just looking at when that parent sent the email, it wasn't just a recent issue they had. They had it when this principal was there, so it happened often, so.
And that was the reason for the widening of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or concerns for Ms. Wilkins? She also would like for us to have the maintenance surplus list, which is available, and the central elementary canopy quote. Does anyone have any questions about that before I ask for a motion to put that on the consent agenda?
When I was looking, I was trying to see if we had a local company. Was there a local company that gave us an estimate also? No? Or put in a bid or anything? Because all I see is Greenville, am I correct? Only a Greenville company did it? Yes.
The local company,
Did I miss one?
no, we didn't have a local one for the canopy, no, sir.
Okay.
The local one was for the PW1 gutters. Oh, I got you. That's right. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, are there any more questions for Ms. Wilkins before we move on? Okay, could I have a motion from the floor to place these items on the consent agenda, please? And a second.
I'll second it.
I need a motion from the floor first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said anything.
Yeah. Would you like to present that motion for us, Mr. Archuleta?
I'll go ahead and I'll make the motion that, we accept the, report put on the, consent agenda for, FPP-01, or that's
02.
FPP-02 and FPP-03.
Okay. And I need a second.
Second.
And a roll call vote.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes?
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
and Daniel Spence.
No.
No?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to Ms. Haynes, our Chief Finance Officer, who's going to present some information about amendments and fundraisers.
Chair Warden, Vice Chair Williams, Interim Superintendent Ingram, and board members. Good evening. Finance has one agenda item for consent agenda and then one item that we're requesting the board take action on this evening. The first item on the agenda is for the consent agenda, and it's FBT 04 budget amendments, numbers 104, 202, 305, and 804. The first amendment, budget number 104, is for the State Public School Fund and shows an overall increase of $941,752. The majority of the changes is to align our budget with our actual allotments. Amendment number 202 is for the current expense fund and shows no overall increase or decrease, but shows a decrease in PRC 001 of $22,686 and an increase in PRC 061 for $20,000 and PRC 809 for $2,686. Amendment number 305 is for the Federal Grants Fund and shows an overall increase of $365,173. The majority of the increase is for PRC 114 in the amount of $45,929, an increase in PRC 118 for $8,500, PRC 181 for $13,248, and PRC 203 for $297,252. And the last amendment, number 804, is for the Special Revenue Fund and shows an overall increase of $7,500 for local PRC 587 for the Carolina Hunger Initiative Grant for Child Nutrition. And this will be used to purchase food processors. Are there any questions on the amendments?
If there are no questions about these amendments, I'd like a motion from the floor to put these on the consent agenda for Monday's meeting.
I make a motion that we move to put FBT 04, FBT 05, FBT 06. That was it, right?
FBT 04 for amendment.
Right.
Yes, correct. 104, 202, 305, and 804. Yes, sir.
On the consent agenda for next Monday's meeting.
Second.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. May we have a roll call vote for that, please?
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
And the next item on the agenda, we are requesting the board take action on this evening. This is the list of fundraisers for this month. We'd like to ask that these be approved this evening to allow schools to go ahead and begin fundraising this week. So if there are no questions on the fundraisers, are there any questions?
I make a motion that we approve FBT 05 fundraisers.
Second.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yeah.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
and Daniel Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
And the next two items are for information only. The first being FBT 06 is the finance report. And to walk through that, the top graph shows revenue by funding source. The next set of pie charts shows budget percentage by purpose and object code. The bottom set of pie charts shows actual expenses by purpose and object code. And at the bottom is the percent of budget spent. And looking at state and local, you see we've spent 57.51% and 55% respectively. But it's important that we note that our federal funds include multi-year ESSER funding. So you may see that those percentages are a little low. Following that on the next pages is the dashboard is the purchasing report required by policy 6420. And then the final item on our agenda this evening for finance is FBT 07, and it's for information only as well, and it's the mental health support personnel report required to be shared with the board. Are there any questions? Chairwoman, if there are no questions, that concludes our report.
There are no questions? Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Ms. Godfrey.
Good evening, Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, and board members and faculty and staff and neighbors that are here this evening. I have a few things I'd like to present this evening for the board. First, I'd like to present the disposal of obsolete computer and electronic equipment. As usual, this equipment is obsolete equipment or equipment that can no longer be used for repair. We work with an off-site E-Cycle secure business. It's out of Charlotte, North Carolina. taking advantage of this recycle program allows us to have the materials picked up from on-site, and they also ensure the proper disposal of the materials. Any equipment that can be listed or sold for additional disposal, we also make sure that those are reviewed for items that can be sold. I'd like to place this list of surplus equipment on the consent agenda for next week.
I make a motion that we place the technology surplus on the consent agenda for next week. That would be FBT 08.
There's been a motion. We need a second.
Second.
You see me? I'm sorry, before we second, I didn't see that in the packet. Is there in the packet?
It is, or it should, it's supposed to be.
I'm looking at everything on 7.
It's right after the managed print services information. There's a list of those items for surplus. FBT 09.
09, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the paper said 08. That's
Section, it says section K.
fine. Okay.
See it?
I don't, but if everybody else sees it, I'm good. That's okay. You good? You good? We good? You see it?
Found it?
It was in your packet that was shared electronically. It's not in the printed packet. Apologies.
That's 09.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought I was.
Are you okay? I can get you a copy.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Where was it at again?
It's electronically.
It was in your electronic packet that was shared. Yes.
Okay, it was two different things. So the electronic, okay,
So the 8 was not in this printed packet. 9 is, but 8 was not in the printed.
okay.
Which I was looking for.
Okay.
Good.
Did we make a motion?
I think they did.
You're in the middle of it.
In a second, I think we just good.
Okay. Sorry.
Yes. Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. The next thing I'd like to bring before the board this evening is we've been working with Sistel on a managed print services program. Attached in your board packet, you should have a statement of work with the details of these services. We have representatives from Sistel here tonight to share a brief overview of the program and entertain any questions that you may have. We have Mr. Eric Pritchard and Mr. Ralph Autry. I'm going to ask them to come up to answer any questions or to share a little bit about the scope of work that you guys have shared.
Hello, I'm Ralph Autry. Thank you for having us. The 920M state contract is put on by the state. It's a cost per copy contract. There's no minimums required where we come in and we will take over your fleet of printers. We'll maintain them, supply all the toner, everything that needs to be done to the printer. We'll take full responsibility for it. And again, everything's billed in arrears. We have in our proposal have replaced some of the more expensive devices, but you can add devices to this contract throughout the contract. And it is also recognized, because it is a state contract, recognizes the non-appropriations addendum. So knowing that the school can only commit monies for a year at a time. So we will come in and we'll actually take over all the HP printer fleet with the exception of the inkjet and design inkjet printers. We'll supply toner, we'll supply on-site maintenance. Machines will be given ID stickers. They'll be shown how to place a service call through our company, and we'll come out and service all the printers at the said price. The price is also set by the state. We cannot control, so we're limited to what we can charge you is because it's governed by the state of North Carolina.
Is there any questions?
No.
This has taken us about an 8-month process of back office data accumulation and coming up with a consensus of what was going to work with the school system and for the school system first. And we've totally vetted everything out of it. We won't have a whole lot to present or talk about other than answer questions. So we're good. That's all I have.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair Warden, if there are no further questions or concern, I'd like to request that we be able to move forward with this process.
Is there anything from the floor? Anybody have any questions?
Okay. And the last thing that I have to present this evening is I was asked to obtain quotes for additional desktops and laptops as requested by instructional staff. Those quotes are provided in your board packet. So I'd like to request that these be put on the consent agenda for next Monday night's board meeting.
Okay. Are there any questions about those from the floor?
These are desktops.
The quotes are for 45 desktops and 130 laptops.
How many desktops?
45 desktops, with desktops and monitors, and then there are 130 laptops.
And where are those desktops going? The classrooms?
So these desktops were requested as a second device in classrooms for teachers that wanted to have a desktop along with the other devices that they already have.
This came from a few months back when the teachers had their,
The conversation, yes, sir.
thank you so much.
I just have a question. Are you saying, when you said there are other devices, do they already have laptops and then they're requesting a desktop as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, they have Chromebooks, right? Not necessarily
No.
that.
All teachers have laptops. All teachers have individually assigned laptops that they have. They also are assigned Chromebooks. Some teachers also have iPads as well.
But the desktop is for their use, not student use.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so can I have a motion from the floor to place these items on the consent agenda for Monday's meeting?
We need FBT 9 and 10, correct?
Right.
I'll make a motion, we add FBT 09, FBT 10 to be added to consent agenda on next meeting of Monday, next week.
And a second for that?
Second.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston, Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spoon.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Godfrey. And that concludes the information from the Finance Committee. We will move on to personalized education. Ms. Pereza.
Thank you. We'll have Sheila Hughes present to us about the CTE month.
Chair Warden, Vice Chair Williams, Interim Superintendent Ingram, and Committee Chair Pereza, board members, good evening. Today, I will present to you CTE updates. Who's got control, you or me? Me? Okay. Okay, we're good. Okay, so our focus is raising awareness in CTE. And February is CTE month. So our mission is to ensure that our students are successful in careers and that they can be leaders in this global economy. We do this primarily through our curriculum, ensuring that our students get hands-on activities and our workforce opportunities. Now, last year, I presented to you all there are 16 North Carolina career clusters, and we have 11 of the 16. Last year, I presented our graduated students and what they were doing after graduation. This year, I wanted to focus on our current students. So what are they doing in the classroom? So this presentation is like a picture speaks 1,000 words. You will have pictures to view on this evening of our students in action. I hope you guys can appreciate these because of the lighting. We'll see what it looks like. So our first picture is in our middle school, and this is a problem-solving activity. Students had to build towers made out of straws to support a golf ball. This ensured collaborative thinking, cooperation, critical thinking, and working together to get the job done. In the middle there, we have students, they're learning about keyboard layout. They're learning about the proficiency and ergonomics of keyboarding in business. And then our last picture utilizes critical thought, teamwork, and assembling woodworking sets. At our high school level, the first picture represents students out on the farm, and they're harvesting sweet potatoes. The next picture is our sustainable agriculture production, that's the level 1 class, and they're learning about water management and irrigation. So what these students are doing is they're actually creating models of that irrigation system. And then our final picture is a picture of a young man in our Animal Science 2 class learning how to restrain a dog for venipuncture. In our business, finance, and marketing education area, to the top there, we have students who are, wait a minute, let me go back one. I don't want you to miss, there we go. We have students who are, this is a vocabulary reinforcement activity. And so what the instructor did was separated them out into 2 groups, and she gave the definition, and they had to collaborate and work together to be able to pick the proper term. And whichever team that had the most wins were the team on top. The next picture is our Entrepreneurship Program. And these students had to actually create their own business, and then they had to present that business. Our marketing classes, they're actually working together to create a hostess prototype, and they were challenged to ensure that making this product, they had to have a healthy snack, something that the students would enjoy, increase productivity, and try to conquer obesity at the same time. So they had fun doing that project. Our career development. These kids are learning about positive attitude, professionalism, critical thinking, organizing, communication, planning, and teamwork. And they're working on a group project here about learning to love yourself. And the students, according to the teacher, really enjoyed that. And you could even see the little hearts that they have around the classroom as they work towards building self-confidence and self-love. So our computer science and information technology, this is our Adobe class. And we're advancing this particular program area, hoping to gain more productivity, to connect with local business partners and the printing shops to ensure that we can just maximize this to our fullest capacity. These particular students are learning about stop motion animation. And they have actually designed and created little CTE buttons for you guys that we'll make sure you guys get before the end of this session in honor of CTE month. In our family and consumer science, our food and nutrition class, these guys have learned 5 different types of Mexican dishes. And with that being said, that's what is being shown here. And in the center, we have upgraded our prep area. And I'm just very sorry that you guys can't really appreciate, because of the lighting, what we're showing here this evening. In our family and consumer science education, again, this is our early childhood class. And although we have babies to simulate for these students to take home that do all sorts of fun stuff, because of COVID, the teacher decided that she would do an egg project. And these particular students were able to still dress up their eggs, create birth certificates, create their little bassinet, and still understand the fragility of life and what parenting is about. In our health sciences classes, we have students learning how to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR. And we have Pasquotank Camden EMS who paid a visit. And the students really, really enjoyed this session, to be able to sit and have conversation with the paramedic there, and to be able to explore the ambulance and learn lots of cool stuff. So in our trade, technology, engineering, and industrial education, this is our automotive area. And this is one of our non-traditional classes. So it's really exciting when you see this young female over here who's learning how to change the brake bearing there. And over to on the other side, we have students who are learning about steering and suspension and trying to diagnose the problem. And then in our fire technology, again, this is one of the non-traditional courses. And this is actually a young lady that you see putting out a simulated Class A fire with her peers around watching. And then this next picture is students going through a maze, and they're blindfolded, and it kind of simulates them being in a building full of smoke and trying to get out of the situation. And then in our technology and pre-engineering, we have students who are making, and they create their own design using the 3D printers. And again, they have also created something for you guys. They created keychains. They've designed it and cut it using the 3D printers. In the center, we have students who use recycled materials to make a game. And then the last picture is our geodesic domes that they made using drinking straws. So as you guys can see in CTE, there's lots of hands-on activities to help complement the learning in the classroom. These are our student-led organizations, and we have 4 active: the DECA, FFA, HOSA, and FBLA. And you guys, I'm sure you know, with the DECA and FFA being very active with our local, regional, and state competitions. Work-based learning opportunities. I put 2 up here. One again is Pasquotank Camden EMS, and the other is students from our early childhood class are enjoying virtual daycare. And that's what this young lady is doing. She's tapped into the daycare virtually. Some other ideas that we would like to look at in terms of our work-based learning opportunities is not only in our external stakeholders, but right here with ECPPS. So we're brainstorming with other directors to see how we can blend those opportunities between child nutrition and between technology and maintenance, and just see how we can get our students involved and also be able to support ECPPS, and they get the opportunities that they can receive from the work-based learning opportunities. Professional development, we have intentional professional development, and these are two teachers, Mr. Johnson and Mr. Manzer, who are leading this particular professional development group. And lastly, we ask that you follow us on social media. We're really focused on ensuring that the word gets out about CTE and understanding that the old vocational ed is truly career and technical education. And so there's lots of good stuff happening. And so just follow us on social media and you'll be able to keep up with all the good stuff happening. Are there any questions?
I don't have any questions. I have a comment. One of the things that I missed the most since COVID came into our lives is our tour with our community. In our community, we just did, of course, bring in the community and invite them to come to our select number of schools. I just wondered how we could share some of those social media outlets with some of our groups like Rotary and things like that to have them share with their members so that they can see some of the things that our students are doing, particularly like a featured video or with them using the digital printers and the Adobe and the things like that that are brand new. I'm sure people would love to see the kids on the farm and just to be able to share video pictures with some of the community groups, our city council and commissioners and things like that, so they can see the great things that you guys are doing. Because despite what you say, people still think that there's not a focus on CTE, but I do think it's like you said, because we don't call it vocational education anymore, it's CTE, and not a lot of people understand what CTE is. So I think it would be great for us to share throughout our community. So if we can share those links or anything like that, I mean, we could do that as well as board members.
Yes, ma'am. We will definitely take a bigger focus on that. We did, I forgot what month it was, we presented at the Rotary. Tammy, do you remember what month that was? October. I did a presentation to the Rotary and it was really good. They were very engaged and learned a lot. So that's our mission, to continue to put it out there and tap into as many families, as many partners, as many businesses as we can, and really make this big.
I really am glad to see.
Thank you.
For those persons who follow shows, it's always very rewarding to see the production.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Ms. Hughes, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Is there an opportunity, or is there do we offer, I guess, companies within our city, county to come in and present to the students as they are developing their talents?
You mean as guest speakers?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. We take guest speakers. Absolutely.
So is that something that's readily known, or is that something that there's a specific protocol for, or is something that you guys do automatically?
What happens is the teacher, depending upon what focus and what program, the teacher may reach out to various partners that's specific to that particular objective or curriculum and something that aligns. For a prime example, Ms. Blow in Health Sciences at Pasquotank County High School, she was working on safety. Patient safety, and she reached out to Pasquotank Camden EMS. And so that was perfect opportunity, and students really loved that and still asking for them to come back a second time. So the opportunity is definitely there.
You know, my thought is, as they get familiar with the companies in our area and they finish CTE and graduate, maybe there's an opportunity for employment for some of these places if the job opportunities are there.
And that's where the work-based learning opportunities come into play. And it's essential that we continue to rebuild our partnerships, the partnerships that we had pre-pandemic. And that's something that we're working really hard at now in ensuring that our students have the industry level credentials that they need to be able to come out of high school and go straight into those jobs. And so our focus is not only to have them college ready, but to also have them career ready. And that's what we're doing.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have an internship program?
Sir?
We have an internship program.
Well, we do have a pre-apprenticeship program that we're revamping and making sure that it's truly what it's intended to be. So that's another thing that we are working very hard at it becoming better. Yes.
Just to piggyback on what has been said about presentations to different organizations like the commissioners and the Rotary Club and so forth, I think it would be great if you could have students who would accompany you during some of these presentations and have them speak about their experiences with those programs.
Absolutely. I agree.
I was impressed when I think it was when we first got on the board, you did have students who came through the CTE program and now they're working in the field and you had them come back and say something. And I thought that was very impressive. You remember that? You did the video and I think that was very impressive. So as Pam and all said, yeah, if you can bring more of that in, I think testimonies are always better to help a program, help sell a product.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And we can do that.
That was really good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? We're good? That's it for our committee.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. And now we're going to turn to Ms. Houston with the Policy Code Committee.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Tammy Sawyer, who is Director of Community Schools, PIO, and Executive Assistant to Superintendent and Board.
Madam Chair, for a moment of privilege, as Ms. Sawyer approaches the podium, I've got some remarks that I'd like to make in lieu of the governor's recent announcement. Before Ms. Sawyer shares her policy updates, I'd like to share a few comments and recommendation with the board that will be part of the policy recommendations this evening. There has been much discussion and consideration given to the choice of required or optional masks for students and staff recently. Governor Cooper made the public announcement last Thursday that he was encouraging school districts and local governments to end the mask mandates for schools by March 7th, and that the Strong Schools Toolkit would be revised to reflect the latest updates. It's my understanding that it will continue to be a CDC requirement to mask while on school bus transportation. With the latest guidance from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and Governor Cooper regarding the shift to ending the face covering mandate for school districts, it's my recommendation that we consider optional masking for ECPPS. During the policy recommendations, Ms. Sawyer will share the policy recommendation for optional masking with you for your discussion and consideration. I request that you should consider approving the policy for optional masking, that you also consider a timeline for implementation that provides time for staff to ensure other layered mitigation efforts are in place as well as time to appropriately communicate updated protocols with staff and families. And it's important to note that should we see a significant rise in positive cases, I may ask the board to reconsider the policy. Should the board approve optional masking, we'll provide that updated information to staff and families as quickly as we can. We'll also remind everyone to continue physical distancing as recommended, to sanitize, and to stay home when sick. We will remind staff and families of the symptoms of COVID. We'll also share the latest guidance on isolation and quarantine when someone is returning to school after testing positive or being exposed, as well as mask protocols that accompany these guidelines. There are still masking protocols for those who return after testing positive or after being exposed to a positive person. This information will be important for staff and families to understand should the district move to optional masking. So with that said, I'll ask Ms. Sawyer to proceed with her policy updates.
Thank you, Dr. Ingram.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ingram. Chair Warden, Vice Chair Dr. Williams, Committee Chair Houston, Interim Superintendent Ingram, board members, and community. I come before you this evening to share Policy 4231, 5021, 7263, face coverings as required by Session Law 2021-130, Section 10. As you are aware, boards are now required to revisit this policy on a monthly basis. As Dr. Ingram shared, based on the latest information from Governor Cooper, and in light of the changes forthcoming in the Strong Schools Toolkit, we have shared the recommended policy option that provides for optional masking. I have also provided 2 additional policies: visitors in the schools and community use of facilities. You have 2 different copies of the visitors in the schools, PC 26A, which is part of the latest updates, excuse me, from NCSBA, showing the COVID restrictions are removed, and our current policy, where all COVID restrictions were lifted except for the restriction of the use of indoor facilities for community use of facilities. We did add a statement to the policy regarding face coverings that simply states all visitors to the schools must comply with the policy for face coverings. This was written so it would apply to either policy we are following at the time. Both the visitors in the schools and the current community use of facilities policy currently reflect the same restriction on indoor use of facilities. The community use of facilities policy is also up for review, and while the update includes quite a few other changes that are currently still under review by staff, it also does remove the COVID restrictions. Based on the information I have shared, I'm requesting the following. The board consider the masking policy before you and share in discussion as needed to determine the motion based on the recommendation provided. Secondly, that the board consider approval this evening to remove the COVID restrictions that limit the community use of facilities indoors from both the visitors in the schools policy and the community use of facilities policy as presented. In addition, adding the statement regarding visitors comply with the face coverings policy. Again, that would only be applicable to whichever phase we are in at the time. We are asking for approval this evening versus placing these on the consent agenda. Policy Code 2420, Adoption of Policies, states that policies introduced and recommended to the board must be in writing, and policies will not be adopted until a subsequent meeting. The board may, however, waive those requirements of this policy in accordance with Policy 2450, Suspension of Board Policies. The community use of facilities policy will potentially come before you again with the additional revisions. However, the recommended updates are still under review along with our other policy updates. Committee Chair Houston, that concludes my policy presentation this evening. Feel free to discuss the recommendations or ask questions.
At this time, first of all, are there any questions?
I do have a question. So according to as it relates to this mask, whether we wear them or not, my personal opinion really doesn't matter as much as it does that we get the opinion of all our stakeholders.
Say that again.
My personal opinion doesn't matter as much as it does, according to the mask mandate, or the mask mandate, as it does getting the opinions of all our stakeholders. I know this is a very controversial topic. There's going to be just as many people on one side for keeping the mask mandate as there is with people who saying go to optional masks. My question is, have we spoken to all of our, or spoken to the majority of our staff or our school administrators about what their decision is on the mask going optional?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to refer to Dr. Ingram on this, so we
Yeah,
we did
we-
meet with
Yes,
administrators.
we had a meeting with, a separate meeting with nurses, and then we asked our principals. Then we had a joint meeting, and this was prior to Governor Cooper's proclamation, or not proclamation, but his press conference last Thursday. And there are, like you said, Mr. Spence, there are people that feel strongly both ways. So that's where we are. We thought about surveying the broader community. There was no real way to prevent someone from answering a survey numerous times. So you might have somebody answering a survey 100 times, which would skew the results. So we were holding off on that for a while, and then when the governor's proclamation came out, I felt like that was fairly compelling for the governor of our state to encourage schools to go to a masking option. I use the term frequently, even as far back as last April, before I ever came here to work, that gives basically direction, permission, and cover from the governor's office. So at that point, we didn't pursue the surveying any further. But there are people that feel strongly both ways. I acknowledge that. I also agree with you. In fact, I think I made the statement, Tammy, that what I believe personally isn't really of importance. It's a professional responsibility I have. But given the weight of the governor's office and the fact that the numbers are way down, this board has also decided that contestants in indoor sports didn't have to mask. It's also very difficult. We can get people in the door with masks, but once they get into the stands, it's really virtually impossible to police it, and it's not very practical. You got several hundred people in a basketball game, watching a game, and 80% of them aren't wearing masks, and you create a much bigger problem by, asking them to leave or trying to get them to do that. So that's really kind of where we are. But regardless of what the board decides to do, you should know that there will be people on both sides of this issue. But our numbers have gone down quite a bit. Tammy, I don't remember the dashboard numbers, but they are down. But then a lot of people are testing at home, and they may report, they may not. I don't mind sharing my personal health. I mean, it is somewhat of a public concern, I guess, because of my position. I have been vaccinated and boosted, and I still caught it. And I was told by the nurse that I would probably test positive for 3 months. So testing again is not going to help in my situation. I mean, I'm fine. I don't have any symptoms, recovered. Thankful for that. But at this time, I think it's, professionally, I think it's okay. I think it's okay to go optional.
Can you share?
Comment?
Sure.
George, can you share what the response was from the administrators? I heard you say you talked to them, but can you share
Well,
what
I
the
didn't
overall response?
quantified it, but it was pretty much the administrators wanted to, at the time, now, please understand, this is prior to the governor speaking.
Right.
So I think that sometimes people change their minds. I'm not speaking for anyone else. I'm saying when we talked to them, it was, keep the mask in place. But then the governor spoke a couple days later. The nurses, on the other hand, collectively felt like it was okay to go optional. Part of that was
Okay. I'm sure they know that they lost us, correct? For everybody who's still on the camera with me.
About going optional masking. So what do we have in a policy if the numbers start to climb again? I don't see anything here saying that if they get to a certain percentage, they'll go back to, how are we going to gauge that? if numbers start to climb, what is that threshold to say, okay, y'all, this is too high?
I don't know if I can say, I don't know if
Or
I can
that
give you,
area.
I don't know if I can give you a number. I mean, I don't know what medically that number would be. I know that our numbers have dwindled significantly to almost zero. I'm assuming if it's I hate to even put a percentage on it, but if they spike the other way, I'd certainly have to reconsider it. And then I would also consult with medical personnel as we've always done. I was on Tammy, help me with the name of that, the ABC Science Collaborative with the infectious disease doctor from Duke University. And he also acknowledged the realization that it was a difficult decision, that some communities were at different places. But at the time, this was prior to the governor as well. That meeting was prior to the governor. So, you know, he was of the opinion that we should stay a little longer. So with masking, but again, that was prior to the governor. So.
And I will add that North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, they are updating the toolkit to reflect what the governor shared on Thursday.
Right. Thank you. I didn't think of that, but that's right. They're going to be they're going to be changing or updating the toolkit to reflect the governor's comments. So I think the toolkit is probably going to be more aligned with what the governor said. So based on the totality of that information, I feel comfortable recommending optional.
And then one last statement, I'm sorry, Joanne, I'm still here. One last statement. With this policy, when will it go into effect if the recommendation y'all suggested, the board makes a decision based upon your recommendation? Does it go into effect on the 7th or now?
I'm asking the board to consider a timeline for implementation if that's the decision. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to put that in your hands. Actually, the governor said March 7th, but in order for us to communicate it effectively, we might need some time. But then again, some people will come back and say, undoubtedly, well, you've already decided, why wait? You know, I mean, it just doesn't matter. Quite frankly, it doesn't matter what you decide. No matter what you decide, you're going to have some people that are totally supportive. You're going to have some people that are totally against, and you're going to have some people that are, you know, not sure. And this is one of those rare times in my career that I can't say I'm sure because I'm not a medical professional and I'm not a scientist, but based on the totality of information, I think my professional recommendation is that that you do an optional. But I don't have a sense of the timeline, because no matter what you decide, it's going to be, some people are going to say, why wait till March 7th? Other people are going to say, why not wait till March 7th? Other people are going to say, why not give the staff a few days to communicate things appropriately? You know, maybe do it somewhere in the middle. But no matter what you decide, it's going to be it's not going to be received well by everyone. It's just one of those things.
I would like to share that during the press conference, the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, when asked about the March 7th deadline. Okay, they did share that that would give people time if they wanted to be vaccinated. That would give them that time to do so. It would give districts and schools an opportunity to ensure that any other mitigation things are in place. And the new toolkit will be released and things like that. So those were some of the reasonings behind the March 7th that they shared publicly.
Ms. Sawyer. Our person from Health and Human Services there with him.
Can't hear you, Ms. Houston.
I'm sorry, Ms.
Can't hear you,
Houston.
Ms. Houston.
Do you have your mic?
I'm
Sorry.
sorry. I thought it was very meaningful in the press conference that he also had the State Director for Health and Human Services with him, who could also share those other things that needed to be considered when we were making our decision. I'm sorry, Mr. Archuleta.
No, it's fine. I'll wait on the line.
I apologize.
No,
I do.
You're fine. I just want to say, I mean, publicly, people know, you know, what was said, but I also want to feel what wasn't said. I agree with Mr. Spence personal opinion shouldn't matter. But I'm around students all day long. I have seen what it can do to some students with the math. And we taught as a board that we're in it for the student. Well, every student matters. And I've seen what the math has caused for some, albeit the minority, albeit the, they weren't the majority. But also being around students all day, and I believe all students are the same. I don't care where they go, what they do. If they're wearing your mask below and it's not covering your nose, it's not doing a bit good anyway. And there's no way our teachers, administrators, to go around and guarantee you that they're wearing it right. And I'm here to tell you, I know they're not. They're down here. And it's already been brought up by Dr. Ingram, in sports, we're saying, hey, they can have them on. And I understand that before. And I also know in sporting events, I don't care how good resource officers do it or how many times it's mentioned to have your mask on, it's not being done. And being that the numbers are down, and being that I've seen what's done to some children, and it's not being really enforced, well, you can't. I mean, a teacher can't. They can't be in their classroom, be in the hallway and, see how students are walking around. So I'm just saying that I think we need to do it now, right now, tonight. Make it optional. I understand, what it is. And don't get me wrong, I respect anybody that's uncomfortable with the mask. If they will tell me, hey, I want to be around you with a mask, I need a mask, I'll wear it. No problem. But I think it's time that we allow some parents to start making decisions. We trust them on everything else. I know it's been said that, just because other districts do it, don't mean we do it. And I'll agree, we need to be innovative. We need to be a step ahead. But I also heard it said in here, well, this other district thinks it's doing good. And we make decisions based on it. And, I've also heard that while a person without a mask and they cough and it goes all over, like I said, if they're wearing it down here, it's not making a bit of difference in it. So I just want to state that I'll respect anybody that wants to wear a mask and tells me when I come around to have a mask, I'll do it. But I think it's time we go. Thank you.
Ms. Sawyer, do you want us to vote on these individually?
I will let the board decide how you feel you need to vote on these. I would like to have action this evening if at all possible. I'm sorry, sir, we don't have public comment tonight. I apologize for that, but it's during our regular meetings.
So I feel like we need to vote on the face covering separately.
That will be fine. Whatever's the board's pleasure on voting on these.
I said, I feel that we need to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was saying, I asked her if we needed to vote on these separately. And I just said, I feel like we need to vote on each one separately so that I was just going to make a motion.
I agree.
She has a question.
I just was asking whether anybody else, I wanted to make sure that anybody who wanted to speak had an opportunity to speak before we went to the motion.
I do have a comment. I know that we said, well, I think you all decided, the two of you decided not to survey the community because I think you thought multiple people.
Phil, speak up just a wee bit.
I think that was that was a consensus. Yeah.
Right, when you all, not consensus of the board, but that
Yeah,
was consensus
right.
of the.
As I stated in the email that.
Right, right. And I think that would have been important. I will still say that I feel that having given the community opportunity to respond would have been important. I just want to make sure that that is known that I said, and that's the only comment that I have. I've listened to everyone and, pretty much we've all come thinking about which way we will vote anyway. But I just wanted to make that comment because I think that would have been important. Thank you.
Okay.
I think one key to this is the semantics of optional. Optional means if you feel comfortable going without a mask, if you've been vaccinated and boosted and you feel very comfortable without that mask, then you have the option to do so. If you feel that you need to wear that mask, whether you've been vaccinated or boosted, then you have that option. And I think as a board, we need to impress upon our student population that if a student in your classroom opts to wear a mask, then you need to respect that because that is their option to do so. And, I think that's a key thing to point out. And that goes for our staff members as well. If they feel that they need to wear a mask, then of course, with an optional policy, they can do so. And there should not be any kind of pressure. I talked to Dr. Williams about this. We had an extensive conversation, phone conversation about peer pressure and the fact that oftentimes kids will pressure other children to do things that they may not necessarily wish to do. Please understand, if you and your parents feel strongly about you wearing that mask, then you have the option to do so. And everyone around you should respect that. So I just wanted to share that.
And I want to make one more point. I understand perfectly what Mr. Archuleta said. I know. Oh, I'm sorry. I understand. Can you hear me now? Yes. I understood what Mr. Archuleta said. I know I was a teacher in the classroom for more than 30 years. And I know it's difficult to get children to comply. But I also don't want us to ever make a decision about what's best for children, depending on whether or not they want to comply. We have to find a way. If it's something that's needed for them, then we're going to have to find a way for them to comply. Now, I know after a point, it gets difficult for something like this when there are so many opinions out there and even parents. I mean, that's changed a lot too. Even parents, and as well they should, have opinions on what should be said. But I think as educators, we still have to, until we get to a point like this, where there's probably evidence that it's fairly safe enough for us to lift it. But until that point, if there are things we need to do, they're just things we need to do. And the point that Dr. Williams made is so very important because children are very susceptible to their peers' points of view. And so that's another thing that we need to make sure we go on the record of saying. If it's a choice that a parent and a student is making to wear or not to wear, if it's optional, we have to respect that and try to protect those children from the ridicule they might get if they go the other way.
And I also do think that we need to be very, very cognizant of the numbers. If the numbers do start creeping up to a certain level, we need to reserve the right to come back, even if we have to call a special session to do so, in order to put the mask mandate back in place. I know in the paper, there was a comment made that oftentimes when you do that, it's going to be very, very difficult. But if we come out now indicating that at some point in time, if our numbers do rise to a certain level, that we indeed can come back and make the decision that we will return to the mask mandate in order to keep our staff and our students safe and healthy, then we will absolutely do so. So,
And again, that won't be a decision we're making on our own, just as we have done up to now. We'll be listening to persons who have much more expertise than any of us are here. So it won't just be something arbitrary. Okay, are there any other
We're
comments?
discussing this like we've already voted.
I didn't hear you.
We're kind of doing this
Yeah.
backwards right now.
Say that
I guess we
again.
need to go on and,
Dr. Williams, what did you say?
I said, we're discussing this like we've already voted.
Oh, no, I
I said,
don't
I
mean
think
that.
we-
This is,
You probably need to
Just
go
in
on and
case.
get the motion,
Yeah.
move forward.
okay, Ms. Perez, did you want to offer a motion?
I wanted to offer a motion, but I wanted to clarify something. Does my motion need to have the timeline in it? Because I don't want it to, the voting on yes and no to be based on my timeline that I'm going to propose.
So we will need a timeline from the board as to when we will implement this.
yes. I mean, we do. need
But
a-
do you want it separate
It
or
can-
within the motion?
It can be at your pleasure, it can be together, that you're approving this policy effective at a certain date.
I think that would probably be better to include the date effective in the motion.
Okay,
That's my opinion.
okay.
Is our attorney, is that acceptable?
Okay. I make a motion that we approve the recommendation for optional face coverings to go into effect March the 1st.
There a second?
I'm sorry, what was that date?
March the 1st.
You've heard the motion that the policy will go into effect on March 1st. Is there a second?
Second.
We need a roll call vote.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Williams?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I should have asked for the question.
What was your thoughts? What were your thoughts on March 1st?
It's an easy date to remember, and it gives us time to communicate to the individuals who.
Right, so the governor's date was March 7th. So what's the difference in your March 1st and a March 7th? I just need to know as we're.
It's a week from tomorrow.
So
I just felt like that would give us time to discuss with everyone. Now, if everyone has a point of contention with that, and I will change my motion to March the 7th. That's
Well,
what
I'll make a comment about March the 1st. My opinion on March the 1st
Can you
is-
hold for, Rodney, do you mind waiting just a minute so Pam can just finish explaining what she was
Okay.
saying? Thank you.
Oh, I was done. I just said that I felt like it would give us a week to communicate to others, and it was, a date to remember. It's a week from tomorrow. It's next Tuesday.
All right, because I was just thinking about what Tammy shared and the governor's, not that everyone agrees with the governor, so I'm not trying to get into that debate, but you explained the why the 7th was chosen. I just want it to be clear on why you chose. the 1st.
Yeah, but someone's not going to be fully vaccinated by March the 7th anyway, that they chose to get a vaccine. They would only have one dose in them. They can do that, at any time. They're not going to be fully vaccinated and boosted in 2 weeks anyway. So I just felt like that's a week from tomorrow. That gives everyone time to communicate what our expectations are, but it's a little sooner than the March 7th date.
Thank you.
Any other comment?
Rodney.
Well, I was just gonna add that the 7th or the 1st, this isn't new. So we've been waiting for this to come down for weeks now. So the people who want to know one way or the other, they are listening now. So having it March the 7th or March the 1st isn't really gonna make a difference once that information comes out. So as long as we can communicate it and get what we need to get out in time enough, I think that the sooner we do it, the better.
And that's why I asked the question, because today is Monday, the 1st. And I guarantee you all this information could be out by Friday. I don't see a difference in Monday. I don't see a difference in the 1st. I get your point. That's why I'm fine with March 1. But if we want it out immediately, I guarantee you that you all could have it out immediately this week by Friday, right? And everyone would be aware of this. As you say, those who are really, really interested are listening right now or will listen later. And so I was just questioning, the March 1 date.
We'll see, to go along with your reasoning, that's why I say, make it tonight. I mean, make it now.
Are you gonna
Well,
make
there's a motion on the
You gonna make a
floor.
motion again?
There's a motion on the floor.
It's already a motion on the floor, right?
I'm
Well,
just making,
Okay, if the general consensus is that you want it to go into effect immediately, I'll rescind my motion.
no.
But I have to,
That's not the general.
because it has to be on for a week and we have to vote at the next subsequent meeting, which is the day after Monday, the March the 1st is the day after our next meeting when we vote.
The motion's on the floor. Has it been seconded yet?
Because, am I
Yes,
correct?
it's
It has to be on the next, when you change a policy, it has to be on the next subsequent meeting, right?
It can, but the policy he's referring to is what I mentioned earlier as well, that you can waive that to vote on something this evening.
Right, and that's why I just chose
Right.
that we would vote on it Monday night to, that we would either be a week after or whatever.
So it would go on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there was a second.
Hmm?
Mr. Walton seconded it.
Yes, he did.
So you ready for the vote? I take roll.
Attorney Howell, do they need to add in there for the consent agenda in the motion? Do they need to add the consent agenda as part of the motion?
I can add it.
Make sure. It wasn't specific as to this evening or for the consent agenda.
So this said action tonight, right? You're requesting action tonight.
She is recommending it for the consent agenda, but it wasn't in the motion. Does it need to state that? Okay.
Okay, I did not put that part in there. Because we have to, if we don't suspend the period, the week for the next meeting, then we do have to do that. I just said
Right.
to approve. So I make the motion to approve the recommendation for face coverings to be optional, to be placed on the consent agenda for our meeting next Monday, and for the policy to go into effect the next day on March the 1st.
Okay. There was already a second from Mr. Walton.
Can I ask
Mr.
one question? Does that mean that we gotta vote on it again?
I'm recommending that it go on the consent agenda because the rule is that when you change a policy, that you have to vote on it at the next meeting unless we suspend.
Unless we waive.
Right, that's what she said, it can be waived. Am I right? So no, okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The second still stand.
So,
Mr. Walton?
so can I ask a question, just for clarity? Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question just for clarity? So if we wanted to, as a board, we could suspend the policy and vote tonight,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
correct?
right.
Yeah.
We waive
Or
the
that it
policy.
goes in effect on the 7th.
You would have,
Waive the policy.
you would have to have a motion to suspend the policy.
Got you.
And
And then
then-
the motion.
Yes.
Okay, excuse me. So are you saying for it to begin to end tonight? I mean,
Or you
the,
just wanna
So
vote
Mr.
tonight?
Archuleta was wondering, do we have to vote again on our next meeting?
oh, okay.
So really, technically, we do not have to wait till next meeting to vote on it. If we suspend tonight the policy and then vote that the policy goes in effect on this.
March 1st.
And that is what I prefer we do.
That's what I was.
So let me make sure I've got this correct. Do we need to do anything with the original motion as far as voting to rescind and issue a new motion?
We need to vote to rescind that motion, don't we?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
2420.
So we'll vote to rescind the first motion and issue a new motion. Thank you.
Okay, so I rescind my motion and now we vote on it.
Vote to rescind the motion.
We need a second.
Yes.
Second.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? If not, I'd like to call for the vote.
Okay, so we are rescinding the motion that was originally placed. Pam Perezza made the motion and Mr. Archuleta has seconded. Dr. Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay,
Okay, so I make
Okay.
a motion that we waive the waiving period, the period that we're supposed to wait, the waiting period, for changing our policies, this evening so that we can vote on these 3 policies.
is that appropriate?
I think 2420.
Right.
And policy,
To
and
suspend.
according to policy 2420,
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Okay, we are voting to waive, in accordance with 2420, to waive so that the board can vote this evening. Motion and a second has been made. Dr. Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Pereza,
yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation for optional face coverings and that we vote on it this evening.
Effective,
March 1st.
March 1st.
right, okay.
Is there a
Right.
second?
Second.
Thank
Is
you.
there any further discussion?
Okay, thank you. It has been motioned and seconded to approve, to accept the recommendation for optional masking effective March 1st. Okay, Dr. Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. I had 2 others before. You want me to go back to revisit those now? Okay,
Ready to go on to number 2,
yes.
visitors?
Yes, so the second one was to ask you to also waive to consider approving this evening the visitors in the schools and the community use of facilities. And that would be another one that you would waive. Do a motion to waive and then a motion
Said
to,
that in my motion for all 3.
for all 3, okay.
I said in my motion though for all, that to waive the
Which is
voting
correct.
timeframe.
Saying that.
That's what
Okay.
We need to vote separately on each,
Oh,
Okay.
on each item.
Gotcha.
Okay. So did we get a motion for number 2? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. We don't need to get a motion to waive it, but we just need for visitors are encouraged to use school facilities made available to the public. Is that what we're doing?
Yes.
So
Mhm.
can I get a motion for that?
I make a motion that we approve the revisions to policy 5020 visitors to the schools.
Second.
Can we-
Any discussion?
I'm sorry, who made the second?
I'll say
Thank you.
Dr. Williams.
All right. Dr. Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Thank you.
And number 3? I'll just make that motion. To allow visitors to attend events that are open to the public, such as athletic events, musical programs, and other dramatic.
Which one?
So the community use of facilities would open us up to allow the community to use our indoor facilities.
Sorry.
That's okay.
To allow, I move that we allow visitors to use our indoor facilities for events such as, all of those that are stated, athletic events, musical programs, and dramatic productions.
Did we quote 5030 or no? Or PC 46?
Is somebody,
PC 46. It's PC 46. PC 46.
oh, PC 46.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
Okay. Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes?
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion's carry. Thank you so much.
It's all for policy.
Thank you, Ms. Sawyer and Ms. Houston. Okay, now we're going to move on to the Student Representative Ad Hoc Committee chaired by Ms. Pereza.
All right, you guys should have gotten a copy in your packet of our updated policy, and that's policy 2140, student board members, and then our student board member application form. The last time we brought it to you, the highlights of changes. This came about when we met with our high school principals and the early college principal via Google Meet, and some suggestions were made. The highlights are eligibility. We added a statement that students must also demonstrate positive behavior in school and be in good standing with conduct and behavior. So that's an addition. Also an addition is that we would like to select an alternate so that we would not have to go through the process of interviewing or finding a student to replace the student board member if they could not fulfill their duties. I believe that is it. And the application form reflects those changes as well. So I am asking that we vote on this evening if there are no questions to be placed on the consent agenda.
I do have a couple of questions. And I don't know if I missed it, but will the student representative attend our retreats that we do as a board, or will they attend our PD trainings also, or no? Or do we need to put that in the policy?
It simply states that they will be at the board meetings. And I believe we can make those things, we can offer those things to them, but if they're not going to be in closed session or any kind of meeting that would give information, confidential information, things like that.
All right, then my other one, I see here the student members must have a cumulative 3.0 grade point average. I would like to see that lowered, only because a 3.0 doesn't show that having a 3.0 doesn't make that person a qualified person to be on a board member or be a good candidate for a board member. I think a lower GPA doesn't disqualify somebody from being a good leader. So I just wanted to, if we could look at maybe lowering that some. I know some students that obviously I went to school with that did not have a 3.0, but were great leaders. Just a question, if anybody.
I think the committee did discuss that, and what we felt was this is a very serious position, and in addition, they will have to juggle their school work and other activities in addition to coming to monthly school board meetings and events. I felt like it was someone who needed to be in good academic standing so that it wouldn't, take away from their academics. That was what was stated with both the committee and the principals when we all discussed it.
Yeah, but
So this brings about another question then. So I'm sure then their GPAs will be monitored. And
Yes.
so if they drop below a 3.0, then do we go with the alternate, or was that considered?
Yes, there's a segment in
Is that already
here
in there?
that the superintendent has to ensure the grade point averages. Anyways, that is the recommendation.
You know, like,
No, you were first. I should raise
well,
my
I'm
hand.
just gonna state the fact that, like Ms. Perez said, it was discussed, but I do understand what Mr. Spence is saying. You see some kids that maybe they're not A and B students, but they have become great leaders. And I have worked with some that, you know, are A and B students, and they don't handle leadership as I see them old, you know, like I was out the base, because there were some things, oh, they knew it in their head, but there's that thing of learning how to handle people. How do you work with people? How you work with different things? So, you know, I'm not arguing, Ms. Perez, like you said, we discussed it, but I do see what you're saying, Mr. Spence.
Mr. Spence, I think there needs to be a cutoff at some point, but what would your recommendation be? If not 3.0, then what?
This is an average too, a grade point average, not all
Yeah,
A's
well,
and B's.
right.
Well, I understand that. I mean, I don't know, 2.5, 2.75, but I just think when we put up a 3.0, you completely eliminate a certain group of students who are potentially really good leaders, but maybe don't do some testing well, as our superintendent speaks of often. Doesn't test well, but they're great leaders and they handle their work assignments. But, so yeah, that's why I'm looking at doing something just lower, a little bit lower, just to bring in a different group of students to have an opportunity to be on boards like this. I can't remember in high school, do you have to have a certain grade level to be on student government in high school?
Yes,
Yeah.
you did.
What was it?
When I was, I don't remember what it was.
Does
Quite
anybody
frankly,
know?
But
They
you
can
did
help us with
have to
that?
have a certain grade
It
point.
was not less than a.
I don't know about now. I'm just talking about in the past.
Right, right.
He said like SGA. I said it was not below a 3.0. He was asking about the average.
Say that again.
She said SGA was not below 3.0.
Or it was
For
not
you.
below a 3.0, right?
It was not below a 3.0. Is that what you're saying?
He asked,
Oh,
Daniel's question was regarding being a member of the Student Government Association. Am I correct, Daniel?
right.
That's correct.
Okay, and I was saying that I know it was not below a 3.0. Your average, your overall average had to be higher than a 3.0. I was just responding to his question.
Right.
Yeah. I was
And I
in high
do
school,
see-
but I don't remember what.
Yeah.
And if you'll recall, we did adapt most of this policy from what the surrounding school boards are using in other districts.
And I do see the maintain, I asked that question, I do see that here. And so then the alternate would be prepared to move up in case, we will hope that doesn't happen, but in case it does, that person would assume the role. I too understand what you are saying, Daniel, as well. And that's that kind of different kind of situation, because you want to give everyone the opportunity. And sometimes when you cut out the group of people that you're referring to, sometimes they never give them the opportunity. So I certainly understand that.
I think you can also look at it as a motivation for a student who really wants to do this, just like with sports, to maintain an average, to serve in a position like this. And again, it is going to be a demanding position. We don't want someone who may be having some difficulties in their classes and this take away from their academics. It is going to be time consuming. So someone who is maintaining a higher GPA may be able to juggle this and other activities and the demands of this position. We have to realize this is potentially going to be one of the highest positions that any student could, be granted in our district, and it's, very prestigious position for them.
Yeah, that's just my opinion. Again, we're eliminating a group of people that doesn't fit in that certain class. And again, I was on student government in high school, so I can see that, but I do know there's some students who could be a good voice for their peers that do not have a 3.0 GPA and could maintain. But that's just my opinion. It's the vote of the board, so
I agree with that. That's why I know it has to be a limit, but I would not want it to be a D or an F student either. And that's why I wouldn't want it to be a D or an F student.
Oh,
That's
absolutely
why I
not.
asked for the.
A DNF
for what would be-
student, absolutely not. And I can see, they
And
have
so
work
that's
to
why
do.
I was asking, because I was thinking also, no lower than 2.5, because.
That's, I was thinking 205 or 207. It's just,
And could still get into college and could do all kinds, they could, even at 2.5, you can still get into school. But, and I know that's not the only thing, you would not be just considering, the grade point average, you would be considering other qualities
Behavior.
that student has.
Well, it states in the
But-
policy and the application that they do have to write an essay and we
Right.
will interview them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and so you will be considering all of it, that would just be one.
That's just a
Factor.
qualification that's in the policy.
right. Because we have some educators right now that I'm sure did not graduate college with a 3.0 GPA, and there's some excellent educators. So they're leading and teaching our students, but didn't have a 3.0. But they're excellent at what they do. That's just.
Well, that's
so.
true.
I don't think we didn't take that into consideration. Like I hear the conversation, and try to bring it home here. The idea of a 3.0, yes, is to make sure that we have qualified students who are doing well in school, but not to eliminate anybody who's at a 2.5, 2.75, 2.0. I would feel that if you aren't as strong in your academics, you could appeal to the board, like you're saying. Like if you have that person who can advocate for themselves or for others, show me why. Show me why I should select you in the interview process, being that you don't have a 3.0. Because initially you won't make the cut because of the grade point average. But if you can demonstrate in some form or fashion that we should consider you, it's not something that I don't believe that we as a board wouldn't take back and look and review, that this kid who is busting his tail may not have a 3.0, but will we either amend the rule or consider putting this person on the board?
So how does that student even get looked at if the qualifications are 3.0? If he doesn't meet 3.0, then they probably won't even get looked at, right? Is that how it's gonna work?
That's a qualification.
So you can still put in an appeal.
If 3.0 is part of the qualifications, and that student comes in at a 2.7, that application doesn't even get considered. So
Right.
that person doesn't even get a chance to come before the board and.
If you appeal that you want to be still reviewed for it, I don't think we would say no. No, right, it's going to be cut off at 3.0. So let's just say that. But you are busting your tail, and like I said, you still want to be heard and you want to have an opportunity to do this position. I don't think we refuse you outright just because of the fact you didn't have a 3.0. But I don't want to see everybody submitting their application who is half-heartedly submitting an application.
I don't want us to get bogged down in this like this.
So the timeline for this,
So we can just slide past it. We're not gonna, no discussion on it?
no, I was just going to say that the timeline says that we would like to have juniors during the second week of the month of March. So we'll have to change the timeline and the policy as well, and we can vote on it next month if we want to change and have more discussion about this.
I'll just make one last statement. If I'm the only one, it's okay, but if there's anybody else has any discussion and is willing to change it, if we were not willing to change, I'm okay with it. I'm okay.
I think in listening to what Rodney said, that a statement could be added, because what Rodney is saying, that then we can consider those applications. So if we know that 3.0 is what we're looking for, however, and I don't know the wording right now, but we would consider less than a 3.0 or if the person has to submit, some of that language could be placed in there if that's what we decide to do. Because I really think you'd only have someone who, I guess that's a way of thinking, and you'd have to think about the determined person who would even submit knowing they do not have the 3.0, but they think that they will bring value to the position to sit on the board.
Or their voice could be the change.
Okay, so here's another point. The student member must have a cumulative grade point average at the time of the selection process to be an eligible candidate. So they apply now. We don't start interviewing them, I believe, until the summer. And then we announce it in August. So
What, to tell you the truth, when I looked at all the other requirements that are here, you know, I understand the 3.0, and I'd say no less than 2.5. But I just can't believe that a student who did a quality essay, who was willing to do a quality essay, expressing why they wanted to do it, and they were able to get 3 letters of recommendation, and they had a 2.5, that they would not be a person who would be, or 2.7. Because I think that essay would say a lot. And of course, you know, you'd have to believe that the student would be writing the essay themselves, but I think if they really wanted this position, they would do that. Just my opinion, it doesn't, you know, just wanted to add to it.
So again, I'm not sure what you want me to do. Do you want me to wait until next month? Do you still
Well,
have
it's just 2
questions?
people, so I mean, you know, the rest,
Say it again?
if the board votes to go along with it the way it is, then we go along with it the way it is.
Then I have no choice, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I'm personally saying I would just like to see that 3.0 drop a little lower to open up the class. Because reality is, like you just said, if they write the essay, if they get the referrals from their teachers, even if they have a 2 point whatever it is, if they get referrals from, because it says it from the teachers or principal or whatever, I don't know. What's the consensus, I guess?
But I've seen those, I really have. I mean, who really do have great leadership skills, and just something gets in the way. I mean, you could have B's in everything, get a C, and it would take it down. So that's the only reason I'm saying that. Students who have lots of promise. And of course, they are the ones many times who, when they finish with high school and get a chance to really be out on their own, they really do shine. So that's all I'm saying.
I guess my question would be, if we change it, you gotta redo everything, and we gotta, it doesn't matter, but I'm just trying to get the timing in my head.
If you change it, then we just, because it's asked to be put on the consent agenda.
In order to stay within the timeline that is stated on the application, it needs to be approved tonight, and it needs to be
So could we approve
put on the
it?
consent agenda for next week.
If we agreed, could we approve it with the change to that grade and then put on the consent agenda? I said, if we agree to change the lower the 3.0, could it still be put on the consent agenda for next week? We change it, the grade 1.0, and then change it, put on, yeah.
No,
No.
because if we change it to 2 point whatever, I would still want to go back to the principals and get their opinions first
Oh, I see.
before we come back to the board and say that this is what we're going to do without speaking to them first.
So the principals agreed to the.
We had, as I mentioned before, we had a Google Meet with all 3 principals.
Okay.
They reviewed the policy, and the only thing they asked us to add was the statement about demonstrating positive behavior in school and to be in good standing with conduct. So we met as a group, as a committee, then we took the extra step to meet with the principals. They reviewed it,
Okay.
and we had a Google Meet with them, and that was what they added, and the alternate. That was their suggestion as well, and we took that as well.
And none of them objected to the 3.0 at all? No discussion?
Never mentioned.
The teachers didn't want the mask, but we did that, right?
Oh,
I'm sorry,
but
I'm sorry. Go ahead, let's vote on it, 3.0. Let's go and vote on 3.0.
It doesn't have to be a rush. I mean, if you feel strongly about the 2.75 or the 2.5, it's just a matter of let us talk to the principals about it first to find out if that's something they're comfortable with. Because again, look at the whole list of requirements. of the person that you're looking for. And when you start to tell me about a person who has initiative and get up, yeah, I believe in that as well. But there's a lot of requirements. And if you're telling me that somebody may not have a 3.0, it doesn't guarantee that the 3.0 is going to be able to carry all the requirements to be this position as well. But this is what we're asking for. And so if this is what we're asking for, we're going to need you to do it. So regardless of your grade point average, which we're cutting it off at 3.0, but if you can't do it with the 3.0, we're still not going to be able to use you or have you on the board as a student representative. So if we lower it, we would still like to consult with the principals first and bring it back to the board to find out if that's something that they agree with.
I got that. This is gonna miss your timeline. You said the timeline, we need it out, right? I understand that piece, going back to the principals. Is that gonna miss the timeline that you're talking about? Going back to the principals?
Yes, because we need it on the consent agenda for Monday. I mean, I don't know. I mean, unless we could do it contingent upon them giving their feedback.
I think so. I think so. I think that's what we should do.
But
Check it here. I
the
didn't hear it.
principals cabinet, they came.
Right, but the
They looked
principals,
at this and
right, but
we told them, anything you want to change, anything.
We had this chance too.
We've had it since last month. Well, you got a point.
And that doesn't mean anything, that since we had a chance, we had chances on a whole lot of things, but we had discussion as a board. Right, but we had discussion as a board and,
I know, and I did, I mean, I could have too.
right, we have discussion as a board until we vote. So that doesn't, when we had the chance, doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well,
But
I'm just saying.
this was already presented.
Okay.
Relax, buddy, relax. It's just a person's sharing, just like you shared your
I
opinion.
know there are times when I just don't see everything at the time that I'm looking at.
But we look at a policy, we look at it later, we see something different. Relax.
Okay, so anyway, but I'm okay.
And on that, on this
You
topic,
slapped the paper, you slapped.
yeah,
I would feel more comfortable.
George, don't do that. Don't do that, George. You slammed the paper.
you don't do
Relax.
that. You accused me of something I wasn't doing. I was trying to
Relax, George.
Yeah.
Right, I would feel more comfortable since I'm not quite sure what GPA everyone is comfortable with. If someone would make a motion to change this, is that appropriate, Tammy?
So you can certainly do what you choose to do on that. But you can, instead of having this on the consent agenda, for next week, you could have it on an action agenda as an action agenda item. That would give you a week to be able to bring back information about the principal's feedback, if that's what they.
Based on, so you mentioned a 2.5, a 2.75, and a 3.0. Are you comfortable with me taking that to the principals this week and asking them what their opinion is on the GPA? And then we will put this as an action item next week and vote on it Monday. Does that satisfy everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and would you also do one more thing, because I know this would help me a lot. Find out if there's a minimum for SGA.
Yes.
Because if there isn't a minimum for SGA, then I really do believe this should be comparable to what.
I mean, I'm not certain, but
I'll go with that.
I
I'll go
feel,
with that.
I feel like that.
I'm not certain about it now.
I didn't hear you.
Years at all.
I said I'm not certain, but I can find that out as well, although I don't feel like this student should have a lower GPA
not.
than what. Huh?
It's not, you don't know.
No, that's what I said. I think it should be comparable to SGA. But
I think
I'm
it should be
pretty
the
sure
same as
SGA
SGA because they're going to be an as the
Oh.
policy says, they're going to be an ex officio member of their school's SGA, so it should be.
To be an
Okay with that.
officer.
Right, to be, yeah.
And I'm completely okay with that, yeah.
From what I recall from the SGA, to be an officer, you had to maintain a certain GPA.
Right.
But representatives, they're elected in their homerooms.
Right.
Well,
I
at least
couldn't
that's the way it
remember.
used to be. I don't know about now.
I don't remember.
And, that's anybody, not really based on grades or whatever. It's just whoever the people vote in your homeroom, the people who vote for the representative they wish. They vote on a representative and an alternative.
Well, I just looked at.
But to maintain an office,
They had to have.
yeah.
Yeah, I
I just looked at them as comparable student government types. organizations. Anyway,
Okay, so we are making this an action item for next Monday. I will talk to the principals about our discussion, and I will also find out what the requirement is for an SGA officer at the schools.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you to Ms.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Perez, and we're going to move on to excellent educators again.
Yeah,
Dr. Williams,
yes.
I've already did that.
with our superintendent's report and recommendation.
Did we vote on that already?
I move that we accept the superintendent's report and recommendations for personnel.
Second.
Your word, I believe we voted on that right after closed session.
Yeah, we
Yes, we
did.
did.
I did.
Yeah, we did. Okay. I'm sorry.
That's my fault. Mr. Attorney, do we need to take any action because we went out of order?
We
Okay.
did do that.
Oh, as soon as we can.
Right.
Yeah. I was just going by the agenda. I'm sorry. Is there anything else, any other business at this time? Okay, so we are going to adjourn.
Close session.
We are going back into closed session, but don't we need to adjourn this session and then? Okay, all right, so we're gonna. Okay, so we're gonna resume with closed session at this time. We don't need a motion to we do need a motion, okay.
Are we going back into open after
Yeah,
that close?
yeah.
Have to.
So I need a motion to resume closed session at this time. And a second.
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yeah.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
This one.